worm factory that I've had for a while. I start out with this, but usually I have a big old cast iron tub that I took out of the house, and then I use that, and you can take and put compost in there, a cow patties or cow poop, and then you can put some red wigglers in there, or just fishing worms, because the aim is to make a worm compost or worm tea, because it has like a little valve down there that the water, the fluid will drop down and you can make worm tea. So this is a good way to get started. I got so busy that I couldn't tend to my worms, but then into the compost, when I emptied it out, there was red wigglers in there. So I don't think you really have to buy them. If you just have a compost, usually they'll show up in there. So this is like, you take worms like the food that's chopped as small as possible. All vegetables, tables, and preparation scraps, peeled, and vegetables that are past their prime. All fruits, table scraps, peels and cores, starches, pancakes, pasta, rice, pizza crust, cereal, crackers, stale bread, fiber, shredded paper, egg cartons, peanuts. The egg cartons are like the paper ones, not like the little foam type egg cartons. Peanut shells, magazines, Kleenexes, napkins, cardboard, junk mail, healthy snacks, ground coffee, filters, crushed eggs, tea bags without staples, dead flowers and plants, non-disease, of course, and leaves and plant trimmings. So you're going to place this bin, and bin management is to place several moist sections of paper, like newspaper. I got actually a little paper that I use to season my coffee with. But you soak it in water and you directly put it onto the top of the food into the feeding tray. And then feeding food mixture, 50% kitchen scraps, 50% fiber. 1 pound of worms need a 1/2 pound of food per day. Now, it doesn't take very long for those worms to multiply, because they're always laying eggs. And then you want to avoid overfeeding, and the reason of that is because of mold and stuff like that. If they're not eating it all, this stuff is going to get moldy. And then the worms require moist bedding. So you do have to check onto it, make sure that it's moist. Now I took some of the compost and put in there, so they still got some to eat onto. And I seen the red wigglers into my compost, so I just put them in there. They're really hardly, they're not, you just got to make sure it stays moist. I make sure the ants don't get into it. Worms require moist bedding. And so to reduce moisture, add dry shredded paper, because we know paper takes and soaks it up. And the operation temperature should be around 40 to 80 degrees. You can keep your worm bin in a dry, cool location. Now, it is into the greenhouse at the moment. That's at the moment. And the reason of that is I'm just getting started so I can watch for ants. Now, normally I would like to put it, I definitely have it sitting up on like cinder blocks. Right now I don't. I was just happened to clean out the compost and seen the red wigglers, and I was like, they haven't finished eating in here, and I just took some of the worms and put in there. Now I started out purchasing red wigglers, but once you get them started, then it's just super easy. When I was emptying out my cast iron tub of the worm compost, I put some in here, so there's red wigglers all into these raised beds. The fact of that is that you have to, they'll eat the soil, they're always eating, but they're always pooping, they're always fertilizing. So it's got a very good benefit factors when it comes to making your worm compost. Very super easy. The basics is basically keep them fed so they won't starve, and keep it moist. If you have it, like usually I started out having the cast iron sitting up under there and into the shade, which the trees was, I cut the limbs out, but this early in the morning, so that'll be shaded over. So they did very, very well, very well. And that cast iron tub, it didn't take very long before I had some worm compost. So you see the greenhouse, we're always trying to find a way to fertilize things around here because plants are always eating. Worms are always eating. Worms are always pooping, putting out eggs, always multiplying. So this has 3 tiers, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is the upward migration composting worm bin system. So the worms are down here in this section, and they got some to eat. I need to make sure I check to keep that moist. And then once it looks like it's full, that it's made compost, worm compost, then I'll take and put scraps and newspaper and things up here to help get them to migrate upwards, to get them out of here and get them to migrate upwards. So therefore I'll stop feeding down here. Once that's done, I'll stop feeding, and then they'll migrate upwards, and then the same process continues on. Well, this also, that while this is continuing on, then I can take this and sift it out, and there'll probably be still some worms in there. And that's how the worms ended up into the raised beds, because most time there's little tiny ones, there's eggs, and then they're in there. But I'll sift it out, get out the worm compost. Now you can let that dry out and store it, and of course then the worms are going to die in there if there's any little worms. But you can dry it out and then store it and then save it and use it. You know, you can take a couple tablespoons and put it into water and make worm tea. So this is a good way to get started. This is how I got started. And of course it doesn't take very long. Like I said, I got a cast iron tub that I did move. I still have, that's got compost into it. And I actually put a spout. Well, I had a spout, but it kind of started leaking. But I put a little spout on it, but I put a bucket up under that tub. So I have put the tub out here, which is kind of sideways now. And you see the cast iron tub. You see how the rain has fell in there. It keeps it moist. I really didn't have to water any which way because rain gets in there, but not too much. But you see, as the compost is still in there, I have got worm tea. So I'll take this bucket to the greenhouse and, you know, water it. Actually, I'll take some up, pour it into another bucket, and then put some water into it, you know, and stretch that out, and it goes a long ways. So this is the tub. I got it up on cinder blocks. It's kind of shifted a little bit with the ground movement. Ground's always moving. And so eventually I will get back out here and straighten it up. And it probably could have been because of the trees, storms, and the trees blew. But this stays up under the shade, and it stays cool up in here all the time. So we'll take this back to the greenhouse. Now, this has been filtered out for a while now, and you see it's not as dark. But when you're making worm tea, it can be very, very dark, and you can put more and more water into it. So this is really, I don't have to do anything to this. Probably if I stir it up, I'd imagine it'd be darker. So we're going to take this to the greenhouse. So this is my vertical planter that I put my strawberries in. I started out with 4 plants into the raised bed, saving them, because sometimes plants can get old and they just start not to multiply. But we put them into the greenhouse and they multiplied. I think they turned into 8 or 9 plants. I made a video onto it, and then I divided those up with the babies, and we ended up, I think, 16 or 24, something like that. It was I made a video on it, so it's hard to keep up with everything. But this has a waterer right here, and with that waterer I took it out, and we can see the babies are growing. Right, they got the little crown right here, and it's right there. That's already rooted by itself. Now I'll let this grow, eventually cut it off from the mother and put it into another tier. You don't have to do anything. They just do it themselves. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this worm tea. It's already made. I'm not going to put any more water into it because I can tell they need some fertilization because we've had all this rain. And then when I water this, of course, what fertilizer is in there is going to start draining out. And they are producing so well that it's pulling the nutrients from the soil, and they just need some fertilizer. So worm compost or worm tea is really great for strawberries. It's not harsh. It's not too high into the NPK. See more strawberries. So what I like to do is I'm just gonna dip down here, and you have to excuse me. I'm gonna dip down here because this thing is heavy. I can't really hold it. And then dip at the same time. I'm gonna grab some of this. I like to start out at the top because when this soil gets wet, it's going to drain down to the next tier and to the next tier. But one of the things I like to do also, if I put more water into this compost or tea here, which after it's done stirred up, I look at it and I can tell that I could. I like to come to every little section, every little base right here, and give it some water, because this has a tendency to drip down. But I'm always concerned because strawberries or my plants are onto the edge so that it can fall over and have space, especially if you got this top tier on here, but then you got the other tiers, and I just want to make sure it's got enough space. Another thing I do with strawberries, when I'm watering them like this, I'll pull this plant out, because so there's usually strawberries back there, but I'll make sure that these leaves are getting the proper light. It moves them around. It gives good air ventilation for these strawberry plants. So I just give a little bit of water, because as this is gets all the water it needs for that soil, then it's going to drop down. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go around, try to water every little section here, give it some water, give it this fertilizer, and that's what we're going to do, so these strawberries will grow even more abundantly than what they are. As you can tell, they're with all these little babies on here, these are very healthy plants, but we want to keep them healthy by giving them some natural fertilizer. So the worm compost tea is great for all plants. And you don't have to worry about the amount you're given. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. Getting a worm bin is so super easy. Very little maintenance, just watching it, and the results are phenomenal. And for your vegetables, having a natural fertilizer is a plus here onto the homestead. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you onto the next video.